In New York, I dreamt about desh hunts, cookbooks, and the Jellied Carp Foundation. Rebecca left messages on my answering machine, but I didn't call back. She said, I fuck a new man every day, Robert. Men who can really get erections. Even my jealousy had no urgency. Besides, the game she was playing was too much lacking in subtlety to convince me that I would find something in her life that I hadn't yet seen or known. 34 letters I wrote to publishers, newspapers, magazines, the organizers of cooking fairs, and the Ideal Home exhibition, all saying the same thing. We are very sorry to inform you that Robert G. Mailman died in his sleep 3 days ago. That cheered me up. An angry publisher called. People don't understand jokes like this. Frederick van der Kemp left a message. When you write a sequel to your cookbook, you'll come back to us, won't you, Robert? I ordered a limousine and a chauffeur to drive me to Canada. Finding one took me a few hours in itself. Several limousine services refused to drive from New York to Canada. And I wrote a letter to the fairy tale princess. Dear Princess Fairy Tale, now that I have a house in the Bahamas, an apartment on Malta, an equity portfolio, the value of which exceeds our collective dreams several times over, now that it can no longer be denied that I have made my international breakthrough with a cookbook, but enough of that. Now it seems to me to be the right time to go away. That's how I wanted it to start, and that's how I started the letter. I've left the empty vessel. I wanted to tell you that too. Why, I don't know. I don't know why I started anything with the empty vessel, and I don't know why I left either. Is one supposed to know things like that? To make a long story short, I was impotent at the Opera House, but that was taken care of, just so you know. But is leaving the empty vessel solves nothing. It wasn't the empty vessel that stood between us. You always realize that. I don't know what's got into me, and you, who had the opportunity to study me for years, and did apparently, don't really know either. So why tire ourselves with that question now? I've pilfered your time. It's true. I should have left you earlier, but apparently some farewells take a long time. Now that I have left the empty vessel, I can make what I hope will be the definitive attempt to relieve ourselves of each other's presence. I have so much to say it would fill a book, but there's no time for that. Life is nonsense, holy nonsense. But even holy nonsense remains nonsense. A rather paltry discovery after all these years. Maybe that's what we share, that we both find life nonsense. But apparently sharing nonsense is not enough. Seeing as you have access to my bank account and have been included in my will from the very start, it's not money that has come between us. That's the last I plan to say about that, because I know how odious the subject is to you. At the drugstore today, I was offered a new gel that prevents shaving rash for free. The girl behind the counter pointed at my Adam's apple and said, "Doesn't that bother you?" I accepted this new shaving gel in all humility. So perhaps now I'll finally become better looking. I'm heading north. The two of us have gone south together so often I know the South by now. But not to write. The world has ruled that a cookbook is my magnum opus. They have even been so gracious as to forget completely about my bargain basement books. And I, in turn, have decided to accept the world's ruling. It does, after all, have its advantages. I no longer have to explain my books to people on whom all attempts at explanation are wasted. Cookbooks speak for themselves. Let's not lose track of each other completely. Although I don't know how that is supposed to work in actual practice. Postcards, perhaps? Telegrams? Is there anything practical I've forgotten? Of everything outside the realm of the practical, I can best be silent. Kiss. Your Robert. I had to cancel the limousine that day because my wife came home from work early and wouldn't let me go. Why the snow? She asked. Isn't that a bit far away this time of year? Life itself is far away if you look at it from the point of view of death. All right, so don't look at it from the point of view of death. She opened her bag and took out a few medical dossiers she had to run through at home. Are you really bothered so much by having made your breakthrough with a cookbook? It's not a cookbook, I said. And it's not a breakthrough either. Maybe you should try medication, the fairy tale princess said. For a while. No, I said. If I'm chemically imbalanced, then that imbalance only works in my favor. I see everything very clearly. I've distanced myself from people, and I've good reasons for that. You have distanced yourself from your own life, the fairy tale princess said. I know, I said. I'm the beast, and you are the zoo. But it's good for beasts to change zoos every once in a while. You finally left the empty vessel. So why be in such a hurry to go to the snow? You've got all the money you could ever need, so why the snow? I have to get out of here, I said, before it's too late. You are suffocating me. You are suffocating yourself, you idiot. She started weeping. Hasn't the tragedy ended yet? I asked. You don't know anything about people, the fairy tale princess said. You need me to help you understand them, or else you have to give them the third degree and milk them dry before you can do it. But under your own steam, you are incapable of understanding them. In fact, that's what makes you a bad writer. All your words, all your formulations, that so-called brilliant style of yours can't hide the fact that you know nothing about emotions, that you don't want to know anything about emotions. The tragedy has ended, I said. The lies are finished now. What do you mean finished? She said. They've only just begun, haven't they? And why does the empty vessel still call you 3 times a day? Why don't you ask her yourself? You left her, didn't you? She's still allowed to call me. I can't be held responsible for everyone who calls me, and besides, my phone calls are none of your business. This is still my house, you know. I don't want that woman entering my house, not even through the answering machine, shouted the fairy tale princess. She wants to saw her head off. Her own head is driving her crazy. So let her saw her head off, the fairy tale princess yelled. That would be the best for all concerned. Make sure she starts sewing today. It's because of her that I still don't have a child. Listen, first I thought that when my father died, I could finally start living. My father died, but the living didn't start. Then I thought when my mother dies, I can start living. But my mother isn't dying. Now I think when you die, I can finally start living. But you don't want to die. You want to have a child. I can spend my whole life waiting around for people to die, can I? I have waited long enough. Sorry. The fairy tale princess took a few steps back. You are crazier than people realize, Robert, she said. You will truly stop at nothing. Now, of course, I'll stop at nothing. What's there to stop at anymore? I don't care, but I want a child. So make a child, I screamed, but not with me. Who am I supposed to make a child with? For most of my fertile life, you've zoomed around me like a bee around honey and chased away all the men who wanted anything from me. I never chased anyone away, and I never zoomed around you. I don't owe you anything because I never promised you a thing. You suck the best out of me. The best out of you? Don't make me laugh. Poison is what I sucked out of you. If you remain without child, then it's your own fault. And my mother says that all you have to do is look at you to see that you are sterile as hell. That's when she picked up a shoe and shattered the glass door of our bookcase. I live in lies, but it is a comfortable villa, complete with jacuzzi. When are you finally going to start whipping your life into shape? Said the fairy tale princess, picking up the shards. That's not my job, I said. What I whip into shape are sentences, chapters, stories. It took me a few more days to convince the fairy tale princess that I really needed to go to the snow. She, in turn, convinced me that I owed her a child. She said, you don't have to assume any responsibility for it, but at least give me the sperm. What do you need my sperm for? I shouted. Every man has sperm. Why does it have to be mine? I don't want to give you my sperm. I don't want to reproduce. I want to be left alone. I will leave you alone, she said. Is it too much to ask? The biological clock was ticking away, and that ticking drowned out the sound of all other clocks. It took another 24 hours for her to convince me that a single-parent family and happiness were no more mutually exclusive than a two-parent family and happiness. She also convinced me that I truly owed her sperm, if only to make up for some of the time I'd pilfered from her. What's more, she said, I really want a child with curls. That clinched it. I owed her a child with curls. A child as a going-away present. Why not? After all, a child is a hopeful ending. We went to bed with each other twice. The first time passionlessly. The second time even more passionlessly. But tenderly, so tenderly, with such incredible tenderness that I felt like jumping out of the window. So, I said when it was over, the kid has been made. Now I can leave. The limousine pulled up to the door. Canada was my destination. I had a bag with me, a couple of books, some old clothes. The fairy tale princess had to go to work. She couldn't stick around to wave goodbye. I promised to call soon to hear whether the sperm had done its work. If not, I would come back. We drove north. The driver asked, "Why north?" I told him I wanted to see the snow. He said, "So why don't you take a plane?" I told him I wanted to see everything along the way. The trip was long. We slept in motels, but not in the same room. The driver didn't want to eat with me either. He said he preferred to eat alone in the car. I respected that. The sky grew grayer, the landscape starker. Funny, I thought. This is what pain is like. Doubtless merely a tiny advance on all the pain to follow. And this was expensive pain too. $120 an hour, not including gas. The pain to follow would almost surely be cheap pain. Not the kind of pain you could write about. Pain you could write about wasn't real pain. Real pain was still to come. I called Rebecca from a motel, but when I heard her answering machine, I hung up. And in the meantime, silent movies. Picking blackberries with Evelyn. The fairy tale princess in the all-night deli. Mrs. Fisher in her kitchen. Rebecca lighting a cigarette and putting her ugly hands on the table to show me, and me jerking off desperately in the men's room of the Palermo Opera House. And again the fairy tale princess, crying over what I had made of my life, and throughout all of this, hotel rooms with dash hands on the wallpaper. How much further north do you want to go? The chauffeur asked. Further, I said. I want to see the snow. This loneliness was made by me, stage directed by me. I was everything. Audience, actor, set designer, playwright, lighting, prompter, fireman, cameraman, makeup girl, ticket seller. This loneliness was my work of art. A pity no one could see it. It was so beautiful. My delusions had been ethnically purified of the human race. I was the only one left in my delusion. I had gone owl for my own firing squad. I called the fairy tale princess and asked whether my sperm had worked. Patience is a virtue, she said. Where are you? Somewhere in Canada, I said. What are you doing there? Planning to go sledding, I said. Indians went to the snow to die. I went there to go sledding. Operation Survival had been a major success. Soon there would be no need for me to even miss myself, the person I could have been, the bullet of happiness that had missed me by a hair, because I ducked just in time. Some people had had the chance to die early on in life, but they ducked in time and spent the rest of their lives regretting that. Thank God there were no more extenuating circumstances, just plain circumstances. That would also serve as my answer when people ask me, why? Who, what, where, and how? All were questions that ultimately resulted in shame, and in all the things that gave reason for shame, and there were plenty of those. To the question why, there was only one possible answer. Just plain circumstances, with no extenuation. Here you didn't have to exist for anyone's sake. You were relieved at least of that impossible task. Here you existed only for the Museum of Loneliness. I was the museum guide, I punched the tickets, and I gave the guided tours. In a complete breach of custom, the chauffeur actually had breakfast with me. For 2 weeks he had breakfasted alone, but apparently he felt the time was ripe for a rapprochement. Earlier that morning, the fairy tale princess had said, "We shouldn't be over hasty, but it looks like the sperm has done its work." I drove someone to Florida once, the chauffeur said, taking a bite of his pancake. I also drove someone to Detroit, but I've never been as far as this. Neither have I said. What I say about you? He asked and stopped chewing. Is it true that you're a famous cookbook writer? Everything is true, I said. Only my rates have gone up. Thank you.
Thank you. If you wait a moment, I bring you a flower.